And you got a quorum, so.
Okay, so it's 5:30. We'll call this meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Carrillo.
Present.
Councilmember Peñalosa.
Present.
Councilmember Stowe. Vice Mayor Flores.
Present.
Mayor Reyes.
Present. And that brings us to oral communications. This is the opportunity to address the city council on any matter scheduled for closed session unless additional time is authorized by the council. All commentary shall be limited to 3 minutes. Do we have any oral communication for closed session?
Your Honor, it doesn't appear that there's anybody in the council chambers for closed session, and we did not receive any written or email electronic communication, and it appears that no one is in attendance that would like to speak.
Okay, thank you. So we can move on to closed session.
Thank you, Your Honor. 2 items before before the council in closed session this evening. The first pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, Public Employee Performance Evaluation, Title City Manager. And item 2, Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D, subsection 3, Council Legal Counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case in which facts are not yet known to potential plaintiff. Staff's report.
Okay, thank you. We'll move into closed session and reconvene at 6 p.m. Ready? Okay, we'll reconvene from closed session. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll lead it, followed by an invocation, so please remain standing. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and we will have a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. You may be seated. All right. City Manager, I forgot to ask if there was any reportable action from closed session.
There is none, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. And that brings us to oral communications. This is the opportunity to address the council on any matter of interest, whether on the agenda or not, unless additional time is authorized by the council. All commentary shall be limited to 3 minutes. Do we have anyone in the audience who would like to speak during oral communications? Yes, please come forward. And state your name.
Hello, this is Jessica Brackeen from the Porterville Chamber of Commerce. I just wanted to read a letter from one of my members. Honorable members of Porterville City Council, my name is Dennis Ickes, CEO of the Tule River Economic Development Corporation. I would like to take this time to address you all with this correspondence pleading for your approval of the United Way COVID-19 event to be held at the Porterville Fairgrounds. Not only will this event make our community safer and healthier, but it will also provide an opportunity to multiple local businesses to obtain additional profits in such an essential time. So many of our local businesses have struggled since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. The opportunity given to Porterville is inspiring to the great people of this community. Local restaurants will be able to provide their catering business to the health officials and many others volunteering for the efforts to end the pandemic. I'm hopeful you will take this expression of interest to heart, as I want to ensure Porterville takes advantage of each moment to help our local people. It is not only my job to provide economic development, which this will do through Landing 13, but provide opportunities where a need for them is warranted. Thank you so much for your time. Dennis Ickes. That'll be all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in attendance would like to speak at this time? Okay. Do we have anybody who is online who would like to speak? Or any email communication?
Your Honor, we have no attendees on the Zoom webinar that are indicating that they would wish to speak by using the raise hand feature. And we did, in fact, receive an email correspondence for tonight's oral communications, and I can go ahead and read that into the record now.
Yes, please do.
This is from Lanaheim Girl. I just want to say, while the city council kept small businesses closed and stores like Walmart, Target open, is not fair to small business owners. That's why we just went to Visalia to eat and shop, because they kept businesses open, even eating places kept outside eating, while Porterville closed outside eating. Just because you guys got money from Governor Newsom to keep businesses closed was wrong, and I hope when you guys are up for voting, they vote you out of the city council. That is the only email correspondence that we received via email.
Okay, thank you for that. At this time, we can move on to scheduled matters.
Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate the council's consideration this evening. We have before you a community civic event application that's been submitted by the County of Tulare, requesting approval of the use of the Porterville Fairgrounds for a safe drive-through vaccination and community resource fair scheduled for this coming Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, April 18th, 19th, and 20th. Community civic event application has been submitted for the City Council's consideration. The city's ad hoc COVID committee did review the application. There were several questions that were posed by that was referred to the county for response, and I would say dealing with making sure that folks stay in their cars, what kind of traffic control would be provided, which is recommended, as you'll find at the staff, that a representative of the Porterville Police Department will be made available to assist with traffic. Concern with insurance requirements, which have been satisfied earlier today by County RMA, Resource Management Agency. Primarily the questions that were asked by the committee have been addressed, I believe, to the satisfaction. We have online with us Jason Ridenour, Maria Bemis, Chief Crodel, Chief Lapierre, who have all been part of this conversation. We do know that ambulance services will be on scene provided by Imperial Ambulance, who we have a great relationship with from a public safety standpoint. So. And I believe the county has indicated that there will be sheriff presence on scene as well. So with us this evening is Mr. Tim Lusk, who's director of HHSA for the county, if he had anything further, if you have any questions for him.
Okay. Okay, Councilmember Carrillo, did you have any questions for, I know you serve on the COVID ad hoc committee as I do. Did you have any questions for staff or the applicant, who I believe is in the audience?
It sounds like most of our questions during that meeting have been addressed. I think there was just a recommendation about dust control. I don't know if that was addressed, just to be aware of that out there, and for staff working, and then the drive-through. Was that mentioned?
Okay. I see Mr. Ridenour turned on his camera. I didn't know if he had a comment in response to your question.
I do. Thank you, Mayor. I spoke with Carl Kisner at the county, and he is working on getting dust control. He's contacting the fairgrounds to see what offerings they have, and he indicated that if he was unable to contract that out, that he would work with RMA to make sure that there is dust control.
Thank you. Councilmember Peñalosa, did you have any questions?
No, Mayor, just a comment. I appreciate the civic events application for this. Being able to review it, it kind of looks like most of the concerns that I had have been addressed. It looks like a fantastic event, and happy that it's coming to the city of Porterville. So I have no questions.
If I can amend my comments. Obviously, this was, and I appreciate the county providing information and city staff processing as quickly as possible. And then last night, Centers for Disease Control and Department of Food Administration, or FDA, Food and Drug Administration, both came back and paused the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which was 3,000 of these vaccines were planned to be administered on this event, which has now caused a last-minute retooling of the vaccine event because you can't use Johnson & Johnson right now, or at least strongly advised against it. So I believe now trying to pivot to Pfizer, which is now going to prompt a second vaccine event that needs to be scheduled 21 days from now, which the COVID ad hoc committee, as I shared with Mr. Lutz, had a kind of a pre-plan as something like this that might happen at the sports complex should anything like this arise, which is an option to consider. There is going to be the need, which wasn't the case when this was submitted. It will require a second event, so to speak, in concert to address the individuals, hopefully 3,000 that get vaccines over this time frame. So there will have to be additional some additional, we're going to have to come back again with some additional information for the sports complex for another, within the next 21 days.
Okay, and I think 21 days out is Mother's Day, exactly on the Sunday, so just as long as we're looking at what that means, because I know there was some consideration of the days because of the accessibility for the demographic that was being engaged in and trying to attend, so I know that there's also specifics with that day that may be prohibitive to schedule. If not, it could lead to assurance and a turnout with a continued second event. Vice Mayor, did you have any questions?
I'll begin with comment, then I'll go in with
Sure.
questions. First of all, I want to say thank you. The vaccines were never even a problem. It was just, I believe there was just a mix-up in communications with regard to the process as to where it needed to go. And I want to say thank you for broaching it and bringing it to the dais for consideration. I did see on the application that RMA was supposed to be submitting an encroachment permit with regard to 224. Did that get done?
I'll defer to Mr. Ridenhour. I don't think an encroachment permit was required because it wasn't Edison property, it was city property. Is that correct, Mr. Ridenhour?
That's correct. And so what they have submitted was Mr. Johnny Wong, the county Tulare submitted a sign plan. They will be placing in accordance to Chief Croto's request to be able to notify drivers, and the vehicles will be on the secondary access that is used by the fair and also used to the sports complex. So I don't believe any encroachment permit.
Thank you, I appreciate it, only because it was on the application and it was my reading it. Now, with regard to the agencies that are listed on the resource fair, I understand those are going to be the participant. I want to know if there are going to be any last-minute add-ons other than the ones that are listed here. Do we have an updated list, or are these the ones for this event? Please.
Good evening, Rosemary Casa with United Way. So the list that you have is currently who we're allowing to come on. We did give a deadline, but now that we know if this does move forward, then we can open it up to additional organizations. I know Porterville College had reached out to us after the deadline. Porterville Library was another organization that was also looking to be out there. So we can definitely open that up. We're also looking at organizations that are going to be doing similar things, whether it's handing out rent and utility assistance, that they do that in a packet form, so then that way there's less organizations out there, but their information is still getting out.
Thank you, because I was looking at it. It says that 32 local initiatives with the exhibits, and as of Friday, the 9th, with 6 more state agencies pending, so the 32 will change?
It could potentially. Currently, those are the 32 that we have.
Let me say, would there be a maximum?
Yes, we're hoping to not go over 35.
Thank you. I see that the recommendations that were made by the ad hoc committee and noted, and also because it's on the application, and there was a side note that there was not an application for the amplifier, and has that been confirmed whether or not it will be needed?
I don't believe an amplifier permit is needed in this regard.
Thank you. I don't really have any other questions other than that I did read it. And again, the vaccines were never a problem because it is a benefit to the community. I was just a little in awe with regard to the Johnson & Johnson, because I was going to ask Mr. Lutz to set aside 400 for our homeless population of the Johnson & Johnson, and we could take care of that just like that. Ah.
So you mentioned it, and so I just wanted to address that comment since it's a good time to open that door.
my name is Francina Martinez. I'm a deputy director with the mental health branch in Tulare County HHSA. And oddly enough, the homeless team is under me, our new MDT homeless team, multidisciplinary team that we're building up. And we did start conversations with Claudia today on working with Dr. Guzman's team from Cuya Delta Street Medicine on working on getting your guys' homeless population starting to get vaccinated.
Well, I appreciate that because information was sent to me that there was something that was supposed to happen tomorrow again, communication is important to us because it's in the collaboration with the city. And I know that it's not to be rude or disrespectful, but what works for one county doesn't always apply in another county. Obviously, in the logistics and with the things that have to be made as far as the communication and being, so I thank you for that because the homeless population, I don't know about the others, but I take a lot of pride in the Navigation Center because we are the first in Tulare County. And the homeless population is important to us. And again, I was going to use this as a bartering tool. Okay, if we go this way, can we have the vaccines for our homeless population, say 400 aside, and let's just see where we can go with that.
Yeah, so the event tomorrow was supposed to be Family Healthcare Network, and then we were working on planning an event on Friday alongside Dr. Guzman's team with Cuya Delta. Both of those were supposed to be at the Welcome Center. Since then, both of those have been canceled, pending what we need to continue to plan around for using a different dose, a different brand that would require a second dose, versus if we get clearance over the next few weeks to move forward with Johnson & Johnson. So Claudia will now be joining our overall planning meeting, which will include several partners throughout the county that deal with strictly with the homeless population or in tandem with that population, so we can gather input on how we approach this from a county perspective, not HHSA, but Tulare County in general, of working with that group and those people that are subject matter experts of where the encampments are or the welcome centers, navigation centers, to plan out even faith-based centers on where we can get good amounts of people that are street homeless into a certain location to do as many as we can at any certain point in each of the cities.
Well, I appreciate the information, and because I actually served on the Family Healthcare Board for 9 years, and I also served on the hospital board as an elected, and not to forget the hospital either in the process and coordination efforts to that regard, because I'm sure that both agencies, I shouldn't say, but I saw that Family Healthcare stepped up to the plate, but in the communication efforts of health care, to provide for the interest and the safety of all members of our community, that reach out is made out to Ms. Hefner at the hospital as well.
Completely agree. We can add her to the list, no problems. And then to your point about the other healthcare partners, we do have both Altura and FHCN in this planning group as well. So we have, and of course, Cuya Delta, and we'll be reaching out to Adventist as well as, once I have that name from Claudia, I can go ahead and add them too. It's a pretty broad scale group. It's about 20 different partners at the table. So we're looking forward to having a lot of that kind of feedback to say, here's the areas, here's the other alternatives we can offer or informational material. This resource fair and vaccine clinic kind of sets the bar for some of that. And the rest of them, we will be giving out smaller packets of information as we do those. We have self-help with the least dose and all of the information we'll be bringing forward, and a lot of partners that are saying, let's get this information out to that community as well, to talk about what's out there for them. So it won't be anywhere near this because we can't do a drive-through with the homeless. Those have to be walk-up. So really it's just a concerted effort around giving some more detailed materials to them as we vaccinate them as well.
Well, thank you very much for that information.
No problem.
Okay, well, I think I appreciate the council asking the questions so that we can move forward with a decision on this. I did want to say that I appreciate all those coming here tonight to be able to answer questions, and it just shows how important this event is to you as well as to the community. But also for us, there's been a few times during the pandemic where a special meeting or a meeting that wouldn't ordinarily be a scheduled meeting has allowed us to make decisions quickly. And I think one of the things that I wanted to say is that in this case we were fortunate we had this meeting scheduled, and I know things move at a rapid pace here as well as in this county and other counties, and that just communication is critical. And now that you know how important it is to us to be able to pivot so quickly, if we could enjoy the level of communication we have right now, just so that in the future we can be able to provide more services to the community. I think ad hoc committee reviewed this and saw the benefits of it, and you've heard the council comments. So again, wanted to thank you for being in attendance. And at this point, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Tim Lutz. I'm Health and Human Services Agency Director. I just wanted to also acknowledge and thank the city for considering this. I really want to extend a big thank you to Mr. Lawless, to Jason, for meeting with us quickly, pulling information together, recognizing that none of us wanted to be trying to pull this information together to the city at the last minute. It should have been done a few weeks ago. And so we truly, truly appreciate the city staff going above and beyond. And I want to also echo the comment on communication and collaboration. It's something that we as Health and Human Services take very, very seriously, put a lot of work and effort into building our partnerships, whether it's community-based organizations, whether it's our city partners or other county departments. And so I absolutely hear the concerns expressed here on making sure we're collaborating with the city, and I want to assure the council that it is also our priority.
Thank you, Mr. Lutz. Okay, so at this point, council.
I'd just like to make one more comment.
Sure,
And it's
please.
with a happy face, only you can't see it, okay? Mr. Lutz, I have your number, so I'll be in touch as well. And I'll see you at a committee meeting of sort. But if there's no further communication and nothing else to be told, I make the recommendation that we approve the community civic event, and with the knowledge that for the next event that has to be planned, you should start the paperwork now for that process. So we go there with the logistics, of course, with the vaccine. So I have no reservation with making the authorization for the event this weekend, and whatever modifications need to be made, but that the next application should be submitted almost immediately for the next one.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're going to have to be targeting, and I apologize to interrupt the motion, but targeting that May 4th meeting of the city council for that.
Okay.
So,
Yes,
will-
Councilmember Peñalosa.
Yeah, I'll second the vice mayor's motion for the approval of the civic event.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any more comment? Okay, seeing none, we can call for the vote.
Councilmember Carrillo,
Aye.
Councilmember Peñalosa,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Flores,
Aye.
Mayor Reyes.
Aye. Passes 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
you're welcome to stay for goal setting. No takers. huh?
Pardon me?
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can go ahead and email me. Okay.
Thanks, Francine.
Okay, on to the next item.
Thank you, Mayor. And on to the next item, which is the purpose of your meeting this evening. Thank you for the council's flexibility and time in having considered the community civic event. Before you this evening is your, which we have the first opportunity to do so with Councilmember Carrillo. So I know that as the city council was looking, and provided direction in the scheduling of this evening's meeting and looking at your annual goals and priorities as we're in budget development now, that I know she has questions that I've attempted to answer. So I want to be able to be accommodating to all members of council, and recognizing as well that part of this is as a carryover from not long ago, when we, less than a year ago, when because of COVID, we had to kind of amend the way we were doing our budget and goal setting. And so So I wouldn't say there's been tremendous progress from the goals and priorities that were set by the council. There has been some accomplishments, and I'll address that. I have prepared a presentation, and I really want to be sensitive to the council's time and your interests, if it's the council's interest for this to be kind of an organic conversation in terms of what your vision and goals and priorities are for this coming fiscal year. But we have had some accomplishments. We have had progress. Certainly, COVID has created some barriers to some projects moving forward, and so I'll be providing an update of that. I did provide to each of the council's priorities kind of a summary of what the status of that is. I know streets is generally always one of interest, and I do have a presentation that I've put together kind of as an update to that, and as it's proposed in the district, kind of in budget development. So we don't have a proposed budget yet. This is really to help form what that budget is. So when we have a draft budget, it's prepared to you consistent with your interests and direction come the 1st of June. Street improvements have always been one of critical, and if it's okay with you, I have a presentation that's done to that. It's fairly, I can come back to that if that's okay. Or how would you like to proceed this evening?
If you wanted to do the presentation, or if you wanted to come back to it, either way.
So if it's okay, I'll just kind of stick to the staff report, and I'll come back to that presentation. So just, I do have kind of a current year, next year, 3-year outlook on streets as streets have been prioritized for reconstruction or other treatments, and so I'll come back to that with that presentation. The next priority of the council was Community Recreation Center. We have applied again for the second tranche of funding. There were 2 tranches of funding under Prop 68. Unfortunately, we weren't successful in the first effort. We have submitted back in March for that, which is anticipated that we will hear sometime this fall, I believe, whether we've been successful in that application effort. And the site that we've applied for is on Henderson and 4th Street. So we'll kind of wait on the progress and the success of that application when those results are known. On Henry Street Park, we did see some progress this last year with CSET finally doing, as the council's aware, they have programmed or had programmed several successive years of grant funding to do work on the site, which I would say in 3 years of funding, we've seen 1 year of work, which, and I think this is just a sign of, lots of, everybody needed to be flexible with the changes that are coming, and the best laid plans prior to COVID have all had to be retooled, and other projects. So on this, because CSEC continues to indicate that they have funding and plans to do further improvements at the site. We have on the city side plans to do street improvements, bring water sewer to the site and things of that nature, and as well as insurance proceeds that continue to sit unutilized. So in my communications with Mr. Moore in this, I think it's going to be helpful to have CSET provide us, as best they can, kind of a set. This is when we really think, we've done plans on our side for them to, working with Quad Noff to do planned improvements at the site, including concrete improvements and other amenity improvements, which they can implement. It's just a matter of them putting the work program together to do it. And if they're not going to do it, then we need to talk about, okay, so what are we going to do in the funding source to accomplish whatever wishes to be accomplished? But as I mentioned, we do have in there at least, not necessarily on-site, but $500,000 of improvements of utility and road improvements for that. On tertiary treatment, significant movement in that regard with 100% plans have been completed for the construction of a tertiary treatment satellite plant as part of the casino relocation project. It is a necessary amenity even when the city transitions to its broader tertiary treatment efforts, given the distance that treated water would be traveling, that this plant will still serve a purpose in being able to produce water that will meet drinking water quality control standards. As the council is aware, the city issued almost $37 million in bond funds this last year, of which this facility alone is estimated to be at $17 million. And so in the meantime, we're also looking at improvements at the wastewater treatment facility towards, and it's going to be a step-by-step process to getting to that third treatment. And most immediately, and as you'll see in the capital improvement project, a denitrification. It's not just building another third treatment plant. There's a process that you have to go through, which we're also in communication with the water quality, not the drinking water side, it's the wastewater side that we're having to work with on our permit, which we're having to have a lot of conversations with regards to fields that we have that are currently, and as the council is aware, we're transitioning a retention basin right now, area where we irrigate into a retention basin, and so we're having to work through some of the logistics with our permit to ensure that we meet all of the wastewater standards that we need to do for the property that we have, and make sure that we continue to operate at a great standard in compliance with all state orders. So I think it is feasible, as part of that bonding effort, was to also provide funds for the transitioning to tertiary treatment water in your street projects that you have in front of you. We are installing purple pipe ahead of, as the streets are open, that network is being established. So there are, even though you're not creating recycled water now, you have pipe in the ground that will be able to receive it and begin the network. For example, Henderson Avenue, which is under construction right now, has purple pipe, which is essentially doubling the cost of all the water replacement, because you're putting both your drinking water and your recycled water in at the same time. So, so essentially double costs as we're looking at all utility costs for street projects. So it'll be a monumental effort. I do think it is one that Mr. Knight and the wastewater and his water staff are, and we are actively pursuing other grant opportunities. There's been some residual funds that have been available through, and sometimes it's really difficult to keep track of all the different folks that have funds, but there's some residual funds that we are attempting to work through the county of Tulare. And Mike, maybe you want to speak maybe a little bit to what the active one that you're working on right now?
The Senator Hurtado's office, AB 74, it's a grant that was directed to tertiary treatment in Tulare County, approximately $2.5 million for tertiary treatment plant construction. And there is been some discussion of some other available funds coming up that may be able to contribute to those efforts as well.
So we continue to try to take advantage of any funding that becomes available outside of what's already been achieved through water bond financing. There's a number of water projects that are currently in planning. And as I shared, you'll see in a presentation, the millions of dollars that are included in those projects, because it extends not only to your streets, but also to it's an extension of the tertiary treatment plant and how that water is actually utilized in the community. Animal shelter facility, we are at 100% plans. That's the good news. The bad news is apparently there's been 100% increase in engineers' estimate of costs. As we talked about, probably around $3 million being the cost of improvements. It could be upwards of $6 million. The bidding environment right now, I just got to be candid with you, and you've seen it in your bid results. In some cases, the engineers' estimates have been low, and in some cases, they've been half. And if I may here, there is add alternates. So if you, in the CIP, you'll see a breakdown. We talk about add alternates that may not make it as costly, but I think those are serious options that need to be considered by the council. It'd be staff's recommendation with completed plans now to bring an item to council, authorization to advertise for bid. Let's see what the bids are, look at add alternates, and Maria and I are going to have to sharpen our pencils to try to figure out what's the best funding. The good news is that part of this has been grant funded, which was the trail improvements in the backside have been funded through an ATP grant, and I'll speak to that in a moment. So some of those costs have been absorbed, but like I said, good news is plans are done. Bad news is the price tags come up over as plans have been designed, but that also incorporates some alternate additives, which there may be need to be a phased approach, or simply a determination that these amenity or these improvements to this facility would best meet the needs of the community and how to finance it or fund it. Interim and new library facility. When we last met, I would say significant progress has been made in this regard. It was at your meeting when this priority was established that we did not have an interim facility designated, and we were still in mitigating the site in City Hall at that particular time, and Fire Station 1. So we have entered into a lease agreement, 5-year lease agreement for an interim library site. The shell building has been completed. Designs are currently underway with an architect to provide tenant improvements, which we would then go to bid, which the proceeds or the insurance proceeds would be the funding source for those improvements. And then, as council is aware, you established a library facility committee, which is chaired by Councilmember Carrillo, which is meeting on a monthly basis. There has been a consultant selected by the council, which will be working with that committee and bringing recommendations to the city council. I would anticipate within the next year for what conversations. And so that is, happy to answer any questions about any of these items, but as as well as with the interim library, there is a mobile library vehicle that is currently being wrapped and will soon be ready for community use. I would imagine probably within the next month. But we'll want to have council speak to how that vehicle is utilized in the community. Sports complex completion. Right now, there continues to be about $60,000 that remains of lighting funds after, and these were lighted field mitigation funds that were received by the state when the ballpark was, where the courthouse was developed at the old ballpark site. There's $60,000 that remains, which is less than is necessary for some of the design lighting improvements. Under Prop 68, there was a competitive grant portion and then a formulaic portion based on population, which the city is going to receive a formulaic appropriation of approximately $180,000, which there will be some discretion as part of what projects. So I guess that's kind of know that you have $180,000 that's coming that you can do park improvements as it's determined. And I'm going to rely on Mr. Moore now. I believe the Parks and Leisure Services Commission had reviewed this. Have they had recommendations, Donnie? And I'm not seeing Donnie on there.
I didn't see him on there.
He was on
Your
there.
Honor, he was on there. He's having technical difficulties on his end. He should be rejoining soon.
Okay. I know he was on. We can come back to, but just know you've got, the ability to do a lighting project is there if you wanted to, or other park amenity type development with those funds. And I believe the Parks and Leisure did review this. I I'm just not remembering what their recommendations were. Drought demonstration garden, there has been some preliminary work done. Staff has taken what those preliminary designs are and completed a property survey and looking at actually getting what is ready to be constructed. What generally was provided was kind of thematic elements as well as that's what I'll call it. I mean, in terms of what is actual preliminary construction drawings have not yet been done. So we are currently producing those. Mr. Knights indicated 50,000 had been in the budget to do that. He's thinking it's probably closer to 150,000 to do those improvements. Is anything you'd like to add on that, Mike?
No, it's definitely taken on a little bit more than we first anticipated, but the plans are coming along, and our consultant is providing some updates. So we should be moving along.
I would say fairly, this is one that, and I think we had this conversation in COVID, is just kind of been a back burner kind of project. Westwood Bridge widening, and actually this cuts get, the conversation of bridges is, we are a community of bridges. In fact, when the city goes with TCAG, with the TCAG delegation to DC, the city is always asked to be the advocate for bridges because we have the most bridges in the city with the Tule River and its sloughs that run through it. So this started out with Westwood Bridge, which goes, I think 4 years ago, 5 years ago now, when it first came on, which we have it in there because currently FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, does not consider it to be inadequate. It is structurally sound, and it doesn't need to be widened. So therefore, it doesn't qualify for FHWA funding. So then we pivoted to Olive Street Bridge, which the county was in FHWA analysis of a bridge widening project. FHWA's analysis has indicated it does not need to be widened. It is just fine as a 2-lane bridge, but it does need to be widened because it's too narrow as a 2-lane bridge. So it's not going to be widened to 4 lanes. It's going to stay as a 2-lane bridge, but it is going to be widened to allow for shoulders and I would say bicycle, kind of consistent with, you're going to hear a new term, which is going to be called complete streets. Complete streets means that vehicle and bike and ped can coexist on streets. So be familiar with complete streets. And what that means is that it accounts for vehicle traffic as well as bike and ped, or other modal transportation. We were talking about what that looked like into the entry to the city if they were doing the bridge project, which now it's going to continue to be just a 2-lane bridge. We have put in the CIP, as we call it a gateway project. So as the city has recently annexed into this area and it's reverted from county to city, you can tell where the city started, where the county stopped and the city started. Well, now you don't know where that started. It starts really on the other side of the bridge, and we have a water well that was part of the East Portable Water Project that is in that vicinity. So we have put in the CIP to begin tracking it. I would call it a gateway project to looking at curb gutter, sidewalks, street improvements of that area between Westwood and the bridge. Between Westwood and the bridge. And so it is in the CIP. So we can begin tracking that. Because we do, now that we know the answer to the no bridge question, now what does the city look like as you enter from Olive Street on Olive? It used to be at Westwood, and now it's essentially once you come across the bridge I think it's Redwood is the street that goes back to Summit Charter Collegiate Academy. So then in further conversation about bridges, looking at a new bridge at Newcomb, which is, and I have some, in part of my presentation, I'll talk about that a little bit with the work on the State Route 190 and lots of work and efforts that are going on in that regard at this moment. I think I hopefully summarized bridge. But we have kept Westwood Bridge in because we do imagine that in time, as the community grows potentially to what we hope grows to the south in that area, that the Westwood Bridge may need to be widened to match 4-lane capacity. So we've kept it in there. We pushed it out at the 10-year timeframe simply because it doesn't qualify for FHWA funding, and now we're finding that as well as that the Olive Street Bridge isn't going to qualify for widening funding either. Veterans and Zala Park restroom rehabilitations have been completed. So that is one, I guess, get to check one off the list that those rehabilitations have been completed. Henderson Avenue and Olive Avenue median drought landscaping, that has continued forward. We're not yet finished. We continue to work on that. So that continues to be an active project for city staff. State Route 65 and 190 community welcome signs. We are looking at potential signs on 65. Probably the most effort's been done on the 190, and I do want to talk. I do want to talk about that a little bit later. I have kind of Mighty 190 or State Route 190 efforts. There's a lot of activity right there right now in that regard, and I guess it also speaks a little bit to what I was talking about the gateway, the gateway project on Olive. Once you come across the bridge. Youth Leadership Program, this was introduced by the council at your last as a new priority, which COVID has prevented us from. I mean, Leadership Porterville has been paused, the class has been paused through all of this, and even Leadership Porterville is trying to figure out when is the best time to restart, which they are looking at for the fall, if things continue the trend that they are. So I'd suggest city staff would love the opportunity to be able to do this. The city is, through Leadership Porterville, the city is almost extensively relied upon to help facilitate that, whether it be public safety, economic development, the different elements of Leadership Porterville experience. So we'd be happy to kind of borrow from that and do the same for a class of students in the coming fall, if that meets council's interests. So that kind of speaks to what the identified priorities were of the council. There continues to be a number of projects that we continue to work on. The Stout Building I speak about. You saw Spencer House has now been demoed, and the Stout Building has had the hazardous material mitigation done to it, and we are looking at beginning the parking lot improvements to accommodate City Hall parking and further public parking in the downtown area. Fire and Police Department, Public Safety, Building Evidence Storage, that's a holdover, and that continues to be one of the projects that is how to continue to use existing facilities better and not prompting building of new facilities, but how to it's easier, I say this, it's easier to create storage than it is to create workspaces, much cheaper. And so this is another place where evidence would be facilitated at the Public Safety Building. Technology improvements, and this is one, and I want to introduce it. So we've with council's approval, engaged, it appropriated $350,000. We have implemented a number of those measures. I would say achievement of all that we've wanted to do has been held back by even the technology providers who've dealt with the same struggles, dealing with their employees not being available for work unexpectedly and things of that nature. But there is funding coming, which we're proposing in here that perhaps perhaps some of the American Rescue Plan funding be used for broadband infrastructure within the community. I was hoping that the Treasury will have developed the guidelines by now. They haven't. What I can tell you about the ARP is that, and I think I shared this at your last council meeting, from an infrastructure standpoint, they've been very clear, it's only eligible for water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure, not streets. I wouldn't use it on stormwater. I wouldn't use it on, I just, until you see the regulations in black and white, which they're not, there just continues to be kind of oral reporting of people familiar with the development process. Out of the approximately $22 million that will be coming to the city, you can use it. I know that the vice mayor was part of a meeting yesterday at the Water Commission where the county's talking about use of it. It's receiving $90 million, and they're looking at how they can support some of their water and sewer needs that you've heard much about in terms of their disadvantaged communities and struggles that they have. So this is going to be one of those, there's not going to be a lot of time. I think as I've shared under the ARP, we are looking at, we have had plans for fiber supporting city facilities. So we'll follow council's direction in that regard. Just know we're looking at how we can better serve the community and ultimately through city services, how those can be improved communication amongst city facilities and how that serves the public. Transit improvements continues to be a significant part of the work program. We didn't get to do a ribbon cutting of massive infrastructure that you've put in. It's very disappointing, the stuff that you've not been able to adequately celebrate and the accomplishments, but the infrastructure that's been put in at the Corporation Yard and will continue to be is pretty phenomenal. You saw just a video presentation of that, but we should have had the chair of CARB and Air District here to celebrate just real accomplishments that have happened with regards to electrification efforts and continuing to innovate and be a leader. And when I talk about electrification, that has to fit in line with tertiary treatment, because tertiary treatment's a very energy demanding process. It will increase our energy demands with Edison. So at the Corporation Yard, we're having to have this conversation, one, increasing our electrical footprint for electric vehicles, and at the same time, talk about we're going to be increasing the electrical load at the Corporation Yard based upon the water treatment that's going to be coming. So how are we going, and previously we offset with the solar, and we're going to have to incorporate further solar development at the Corporation Yard, which the council's familiar. We're looking at land acquisition and things of that nature to be able to facilitate future. We're also looking at other solar panels on parking lots and things like that, because we're going to need to have the offset. So I would imagine, like you see at the school sites, you will see because it's on site, and this gets into a little bit of how you generate power and how it goes to the power purchase agreements that you enter into. At the Corporation Yard, we will be putting, I imagine this, we're going to be putting up solar panels on the parking lot that's out there so that it is also generating power to offset what's going to be the anticipated demands, not only of electrification, but what's coming with tertiary treatment, because it's going to be a very costly proposition. And and Mike Knight and Rich Tree are way ahead in this conversation. This is probably going to get to battery power too, where we are charging to batteries and batteries then to vehicles, because right now we're operating under a waiver from Edison. We're not paying the true rates. The true rate because of the program that we're underneath. So, and I think, Mike, doesn't that waiver have an expiration date to it?
Yeah, I believe it was a 5-year waiver at the time it was issued.
Yeah, so in anticipation of that, what I would expect is that you're going to see C-train size batteries. We have a planning grant that's out there right now, a federally funded grant that's been to look at this very concept, which is using solar to charge a battery, large battery, that battery would then be used to charge electric vans, buses, And I think Porterville is going to be the first to have electric refuse vehicles. We are in the queue for federal funding for, under CMAQ, in that new technology, so, as well as the rest of our stock. Anything you'd want to add on that, Mike?
No, that's great.
So lots of activity in transportation, in the transit improvement, electrification. Bicycle pedestrian improvements, and I do have, this, I mean, and this is where I appreciate the tremendous efforts of the Community Development Department, Mr. Ridenhour and his staff. Luisa Zavala, first grant out of the door, gets a very difficult grant, $7 million for, under the state ATP program, which is basically being said, okay, this was going to be your first project under the $20 million that have been set aside for the city for bike and ped projects, which now gives you the opportunity to look at what your priorities are for the use of those funds and its programming. So we've suggested in this for the council's consideration to using basically the value of that grant to make improvements to the improvement of amenities to your existing bike and ped to enhance their accessibility. So lighting of the rails to trails, lighting of the Tule River Parkway, development of restroom facility along the rails to trails in the Heritage Center area. Veterans Park is a CMAQ grant coming up to finish the last two. So we did phase 1 of the Veterans Park Trail. There's 2 sections that are funded by federal CMAQ dollars that are coming, not this year, but the following year, and wanting to begin look at in that process, matching Measure R money, your Measure R money, to do a potential parking lot. And as part of the Veterans Park Master Plan, it talked about additional parking and playground and bathrooms on the south side of Veterans Park. And so conceptually, we're talking, I don't know why this is still up here, I apologize. That's a good one, keep it at. Looking at making those improvements with Measure R dollars, which would be encourage people to come and use the trail. So what would encourage them to come and use the Veterans Park Trail would be a parking lot, restroom facilities. I don't think it is, it would not be advised not to use it for other like playgrounds or those sorts of things. And so I think that becomes part of our budgetary deliberations when those projects is where a playground or other kind of arbor amenities might be developed on that. But what I really want is that you've got $7 million to work with that you thought you were going to be putting on that. What I do need to say is that did not include the award for the bridge over the Tule River, and so out of that $7 million, we need to set aside $3 million to. It's an expensive, just for a bike and ped bridge, you're looking at $3 million to cross the Tule River, so that you have connectivity between the south and north side of the trail system there. So essentially that gives you $4 million, and there's estimates there. It's about $1 million or so to do the different lighting and amenity projects that I referenced. So Ted Smalley would tell you this to see with there. You develop the project, let us work on the money. You absolutely have $7 million because you got it through the grant. You're basically relieved that Measure R element to be able to do things. If it becomes $9 million, let him try to figure that out. And he does believe that I talked about Complete Streets, that with these projects that we have, that there will be additional state funds that become available, and you'll probably see Ted through me and the staff bringing items asking to do swaps. So do a switch of LTF for state funds, because you do have projects that can be funded, and it will be a transaction in your favor, because those funds can only be used for bike and ped projects. And there are not many that are planned really it's Visalia and Porterville. So, so having these projects and being able to develop them and so I wanted to, that is one of the benefits that you have is to kind of look at, and it's proposed in here that we improve the amenities that are existing now and to better serve the community. Airport improvements, we have a apron and taxiway improvement project, but I did want to say we are now entering, we're entering this window of the runway realignment project, and just for, this has huge implications for really the development around the airport area, the State Route 190, a lot of considerations there. I thought I'd share, this is what essentially this looks like. Can those on Zoom see this? They can, all right. So I need to, can I split the screen? Yep. So this is, and it's, sorry of its orientation, but so it's not north-south, it's going to be northwest. So it's tilted 45 degrees. So, so this is Scranton, and you're going to see the realignment of the runway. This is city property that's here, 160 acres, which the runway will be realigned. This way, you'll see abandonment of Scranton and Westwood. So Westwood would connect with Scranton here, and then there would be a different motion here, which would connect with West. And we're going to have to work through the sports complex access and those sorts of things here. But this is beginning to show you this is coming. And this would be an entirely FAA-funded, grant-funded project, which would include the road. This kind of gives you the milestones that are being looked at right now in terms of, and it's in the CIP. So this is the next I would say by 2028 is what you're looking at for construction. And the first thing that happens is making sure right-of-way is acquired. There's some right-of-way that we have here. We own primarily a lot of this right here. There's a little bit of right-of-way. We don't need to buy any homes, things like that. There's no relocation that's necessary. That's good news. And then there would be the relocation of access roads and airport fencing, and then ultimately the construction of the realigned runway. So this is now in the conversation. Not this coming year, but it is now being introduced as part of the in the airport CIP program, to which FAA is receptive of and encouraging. Let's go back to this. Okay, Fernanda, okay. I don't know how to, oh, like that, right? Okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Thank you. Okay. All right, so with that, on airport improvements, kind of brings, do you have any questions or comments in regards to kind of the review of those? And like I said, I have a presentation I've prepared that I can also be happy to.
Councilmember Carrillo, any questions so far?
No, not at this time. Just so excited about these projects and hearing more information about them. So I'm looking forward to the presentation.
Great. Councilmember Peñalosa, any questions so far?
I wasn't, sorry, Mayor, I wasn't able to hear Councilwoman's comments. I wasn't sure if her mic was on.
I'm sorry. I just said, no questions at this time, just excited to hear about these projects, and I'm, glad to be here and look forward to the presentation.
Thank you for repeating that. Appreciate it. Yeah, Mayor, I would say that it looks pretty, it looks like the direction of the city is looking very optimistic, thanks to the city staff for their hard work, and of course, the city council as a whole, for moving forward with some of these major projects that are, that's taken so much time to develop to get to this point, and it's gonna still take some time to get some of these completed, but they're looking good. I had some questions in terms of the first, in terms of the CIP for street improvements. Have we in the past? I'm not too sure how it's been done, but I know that sometimes I'm just kind of sharing what I've seen from Tulare County and other cities do, like the city of Lindsay. Whenever there's any street improvements, is there a way to I know we've done it in the past where we've done like infographics to let folks in the community know about street improvements that are going to be happening, so they're aware of those street improvements, and for them to just keep in mind of doing detours, when those happen. I was wondering if we were gonna, if we are still doing those or finding ways just to inform the community about street improvements that are going to be happening, so that they can find alternative ways to get to their destination. That's my first question. And the second one was going to be just in terms of the Community Recreation Center grant. When do we anticipate getting a response back in terms of the whether we're going to get approved? Just curious to know that timeline really fast. And that's pretty much all I had.
I can add, so in terms of I know we have, do we do it for every project? I can't, I don't want to promise that that's happened every time. I do know, because I've received, whether it's putting stuff on their Facebook pages or, not. Javier, I saw you, I know that you've had staff that have done that. I just don't want to overcommit that it's happened every time for every project.
Yeah, we do, not just for our capital projects, but when projects through building permits come up and it's a major impact on the street, we also advertise those as we talk with those contractors. So we have a Portable Projects Instagram page, which is where we post those notices. And also before beginning construction projects, we'll go door to door and either talk to folks or leave a little notice that if we're going to be doing work in this area, if you have any questions, you can contact the inspector or construction manager.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I'm just mentioning it just because I know that I remember there was some street improvements done to the Plano Bridge at one point last year, and I know it was very, very helpful for the public to just get a sense of like there was going to be some reconstruction being done. Don't want to add any more to your plate, of course, but just wanted to check in about that and just state that it's been. I know the public is very appreciative of knowing improvements that are happening once they're beginning construction. So, yeah, thank you, Javier. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no, and as you noted, Councilman Peñalosa, it's something that we saw, I think, mainly with that Plano Street project, that we need to do more outreach, and we want to be keep the community informed. And so we have been trying our best to capture all of them. Here recently, our streets department had a maintenance project on Porter Road, just south of Morton, across that commercial strip. And they asked us to help out with the notification, and we posted that. And again, just trying to keep the community better informed, give them advance notice of being able to work around an area rather than like, oh my goodness, where'd this come from? Now I'm going to be 10 minutes late and so on. So we're definitely trying, and we will continue to make a push on the projects to come.
Thank you.
And then and to your second question, I know Donnie Moore is back on here. So two questions I'd ask for him to, so I believe is it not fall this year we hear about Prop 68, Donnie?
That's what they're projecting. They did push back the deadline to turn in the application from December to March. And so I would just project based on what they did there that they might, delay it a little bit, but it's supposed to be fall of this year. So they haven't given a specific date.
And as a follow-up to that, Donnie, I believe the Parks and Leisure Services Commission reviewed your formulaic, is it 180,000?
For the non-competitive, it's
Right.
just under that. It's like 178,000.
Oh, okay. Sorry, with $2,000 between friends. 100. So did they make some recommendations in that regard?
They did, yes. And just to be clear, Councilmember Peñalosa, was your question on finding out the competitive Prop 68? We have two Prop 68s going. Was that your question?
Yeah, it was on the competitive side for the Recreation Center. Thank you.
Yeah, so that is going to be in the fall sometime. And then the non-competitive that Mr. Lawless is referring to as well. The commission did review and make some recommendations, which I'll be bringing forward here at some point. Yeah, they ranked just some potential projects for the non-competitive grant funding.
Well, then you're gonna keep us all in suspense then, huh?
Oh, well, I'm sorry. So number one on theirs, I'm sorry about that. The sports complex, they wanted to see, as far as like the practice field lighting goes, that's what they recommended as their number one. And just to see, they knew that the amount of money that we were going to be getting from Prop 68 wouldn't do a whole lot out there. There still needs to be some money put into that as well, but that was their number one. And some of the other projects they had were some fitness equipment for some of the parks. Outdoor fitness equipment was one. There was, so actually they're broken down into for seniors because we don't have any senior specific fitness equipment. So that was one. And then for non-seniors was one. Those were a couple of the top three ones.
So I guess foreshadowing a future report, but I incorporated it here because I know that's saying you have that fund, those $178,000 that are coming, which you do have some funds setting aside, which may be enough to get a project done, maybe with some augmenting of additional funds. So
correct. Yes, and we have till December 31st of this year to put in our application for that funding to tell the state what we're going to be doing with that. So
that would be part of your budget adoption, I guess, essentially saying, voting, determining which project you'd like to complete with assisting with those funds.
Okay. Councilmember Peñalosa, do you have all your questions answered?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I'll just end by saying that I think the youth leadership program, if possible, I would like to keep it, as a priority moving forward until we can hopefully align it with Leadership Porterville and anticipation of doing it in the fall, so that we can maybe do it for this upcoming fiscal year. And that'll be the end of my comments, Mayor. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Vice Mayor, did you have any comments or questions? I know there's a presentation, but if you wanted to mention anything now, you can cover it during that if you're interested. Or you can wait, it's up to you.
I'm just going to comment, and then I'm going to bring more to the table. I'm going to make this comment to be cordial to Councilmember Curvelo, that I know exactly how you feel at your first project committee, because I was you at one time. And it's overwhelming to look at what is placed before you. And I have to say that I have all my notes from the first meeting, and I referred to them, but with further ado, I just want to say that all the projects that are listed, when I first saw it come back this year, all of a sudden, I began to visualize the street improvements, the tertiary treatment. Of course, we worked so frivolously to bring the interim library and focus on the new library that's forthcoming. And with regard to the sports complex, I began to visualize the alignment with the projects out in that area that are forthcoming. Airport improvements have been something that I have remained wholeheartedly with the focus because it will align with the projects that are coming with the Mighty 190, with the casino, the relocation of it, and the fruition of business and economy, especially with transit improvements. Now, as far as technology improvements, I believe that that is a foresight that should be brought to all departments for continuity. But again, moving on with the importance of the infrastructure of our city. That's where I'm going to stay, and then at the end, I'll reserve comment for projects.
Great. Yeah, and I'll just make a few comments that way during the presentation. If there's something there that can address it, that would be great. I just in general, I'm in favor of advancing any lighting projects for Parks and Leisure. I know we'll be expecting once everybody's able to go out that they'll be utilizing that as much as possible. So being prepared for that is something of interest. Youth leadership, I think that even though there's a delay in the actual start, if council is interested in maybe looking at curriculum from their standpoint to give city staff information from that perspective, that's beneficial, something that we could do in the downtime, but definitely not losing sight of that program. I am in favor of any broadband improvements. In particular, I have always had a soft spot for Wi-Fi at city locations, parks, city buildings, especially if there's city information on, especially as the website becomes redesigned and kind of showcasing the access there. So that's definitely something I look at. And the other, just a question I had too was with the American Rescue Plan and some of our street projects. I know we have slated projects, but since the funding is limited to water and sewer, could it, let me see, how do I say it? Do we need to remain flexible in some of the projects? I mean, we have priority projects we know that have to be done, but because that funding is for water and sewer, could it advance projects that didn't maybe have funding for water and sewer, but maybe would be resurfaced? Because I know we're very cognizant about not undoing work or doing work that we don't need to do, or digging up something that doesn't need to be dug up. Just in the conversation, do we need to be flexible for projects maybe that were unforeseen as priorities, but because of the funding mechanism could become doable?
Well, you're using the right word, which is flexible, which I think the whole plan's going to need to be that, because, and what I had hoped is that I had hoped that by tonight I'd be able to give you good guidance, and there still isn't any, it's just people familiar with the process reinforcing things I've already heard. So, and you can read about the same things. I've been hesitant to advise you to do anything until I know definitively. You see other cities, Fresno recently announced that they're going to do $1,500 for every city employee. Now, they've got, I don't know what their magnitude of dollars are, but what else are they doing? And which, okay, I mean, that's one program that they say they're going to do. The County of Tulare is indicating they're going to do stuff with water and sewer in their disadvantaged areas, but they didn't say how much, and they're basically evaluating. So right now I would say we know the money's going to be available May 11th, 60 days from March 11th when it was signed. So the money's supposed to be available by then or sooner, which Treasury is supposed to have guidelines. And what they have generally said is that they want it to serve a number of purposes. They want it to serve lacking infrastructure, which is water, sewer, and broadband. And there's kind of two pools of broadband, which we're not eligible for the second pool of broadband, but that's trying to be, there's efforts there to trying to open that up. Because right now, I guess the way it was written, it's only eligible to states. It's not eligible to local communities. So a lot of this is just how votes were, it's always the devil's in the details of the legislation. So, but you can use your allocation for broadband because because funds were made available. Can't use it for pension debt, which has also been interpreted to mean not also for other kinds of post-employment, or they're called OPEB. So you can't use it for that. So you can use it for premium pay, as it's being called, which you can do, and that extends not only for city employees, but for eligible essential workers, which is up to $13 an hour more than their compensation, not to exceed $25,000 per employee. What those details are is what are the what are the implications to the employers for doing that? That's not been stated to the employer. What are they signing on for exactly by taking those funds? So there's just a lot of moving parts. So you have premium pay, you have assistance to small business and nonprofits that haven't had funding available to them through other programs. So helping those that didn't have access. Are they going to have to prove that they were that kind of a business, that there wasn't programs? I mean, there's just a lot of questions that are being asked about, which in the end, so May 11th is going to come, and there's going to be, and the way the money comes is that you get half up front, and then you don't get the second half until you spent the first half, but it can't be sooner than 1 year after May 11th. So May 11th of 2022, you can reload your card. But only, not sooner than that, but you have to have also expended the funds. So if it takes you 15 months, well, then it's, August. And then you have to expend that next amount of funds by December 31st, 2024, or the money reverts. And my hope is to be able to bring you, here's what the guidelines are. How do you want to program the funds? And it's going to have to be very flexible because you could have a plan and then you have one side that's not having any expenditure of funds, and then you're going to be held up for the next, because you can't get into the second tier because you haven't finished the first tier. So it's going to have to be very flexible, and it's going to have to be quick. So that's the best I can tell you right now. I wish there's nobody that can tell you anything more than that. So.
That's fair enough, I think.
May I comment?
Sure.
Just a question. Well, not a question, it's just a comment. I plan to be on the League of Cities meeting tomorrow with regard to the American Rescue Plan. I don't know. I just plan to be
And their
on.
comment has been the same thing. We're
But I just
hoping.
wanted to state it
Okay,
because there are
good.
a lot of unanswered questions, and I just want to hear where they are.
Yeah, unless something happens between tonight and Thursday night, they're going to say the same thing.
Correct.
Can't use it on pension, and the interpretation is OPEB as well, because and then this is always the thing. What do they really mean when they say it? So that probably extends not only to pension debt, but OPEB debt. It extends, and then, what does premium pay mean? What does, we know what the premium pay is. What are the employers signing on for by doing that? Does that now make them subject to increased rates in workers' comp and unemployment because that's now considered taxable? It's likely going to be considered taxable income. So therefore, when they're doing their insurance premiums and those sorts of things, they're going to have that as reported. So there's just lots of implications that I think that's why Treasury's still kind of working through what does this look like to building the programs. I wish I could have a presentation here, which would be probably 6 pages saying, okay, so here's the money, here's how you can use it, fill in the blanks. How much do you want to put in each, or put it all in one? I wish I could tell you that.
It's understandable because they probably have their ear to the ground to city council meetings like this, wondering what we have in mind so that they can tell us?
So here's what I can tell you. If you need to spend $10 million in a year, we can do that. In water and sewer projects. We can do that. In fact, that's one of the, I would say, it's good to, here's what I would say. This council's been great about saying, and this is part of my presentation, here's what we want to see get done, get it designed. You heard the term shovel ready. So get the plans done so that when the funding comes, you can move. And so, leaving money on the table is going to be, I'll use TCAG as the analogy. I use it a lot. Because we have so many things, because our CMAQ plans are so good, we're actually able to take CMAQ funds from other counties because they don't have the projects lined up. So we're always trying to be 3 or 4 years ahead in our CMAQ plans so that when, County A can't use their funds because they don't have any projects, Tulare County, in the end, it's been averaging $8 million a year of CMAQ funds when our general allocation is 5. That's really been the return of benefit that Tulare County's had from that one grant funding source. And case in point is us, the city already having in the CMAQ plan electric refuse vehicles, which are very expensive, but there'll be eligible air quality funding available. So I'm using that same analogy. In my presentation, you'll see, we're working through every street project, beyond just the street. I'm just going to give you the street numbers. There's almost the same cost underneath it in the cost of utilities, because you're replacing, and so a lot of those costs can go towards those projects. And then in the end, that has a benefit to, one of the elements that the council will be considering will be, so you have rate cases, rate studies, what I wanted. Rate studies occurring right now on your water, sewer, and refuse. And you could, those are based around projects. Saying this project's you're going to need, this project's you're going to need to do, this is the cost that you're going to need. We did this when we did the bond, did the water revenue bonds. We didn't take our full, we didn't use all of our capacity. Because you have to use it within 3 years. So we borrowed to what we knew we could expend. In the end, that doesn't get you to all the projects that you need to get done, but you couldn't expend sufficient. You have to spend 85% of the funds within 3 years. Council will recall this. So there's more projects to be out there, but so you'll be building in a rate case or rate in the rate study would be making a suggestion of a 2% increase over 5 years. You could essentially offset that in programming these funds into other projects and extending the life. It's just substituting, saying these projects were going to require this amount of funding, but now we've had this funding here, so you extend the funding that you have programmed now, gets just extended out further. So please, it's not a Ponzi scheme. It's not replacing with other money. It's actually just extending and then transitioning the funding so that you could actually defer. But I think this is all going to have to be part of the consideration of the broader plan, which is you may be able to put off a rate increase based upon use of grant funds to essentially offset the improvements that would have been needed to be paid by the increase in capacity, by the increase in the rates. But that's going to have to be a calculation done, because you don't want to get 5 years out later and not. And I would say not go through the gymnastics again of saying, well, 50% or 70% rate increase. And that's not what I'm suggesting. But I think it is one way that you can help with your utility rates of using these funds to offset potential increases.
Right, and that's a good way to make it a well-rounded benefit for consumers, citizens, as well as us. So, but I feel like unless there's anything else, we should get to this presentation.
Well, I hopefully I haven't oversold that, but all right, I'm probably going to need Fernando's help again, but we'll find out. Yeah, I'm going to need his help. I can tell. So I want. Yeah. So that. Well, it can be just on the side. Well, that's true. Probably want it on.
Then nobody else.
Yeah. It's got some small. Is it cold? Well, Fernando said that. I'm feeling it now. Apparently, it's we could. So again, these were your priority projects. I kind of went through those in sequence. Other major projects, I didn't mention annexation water projects. We've got over $10 million in annexation water projects under design, looking for construction. We did a bonding effort on that a year ago. The East Portable water connection project's not done yet. Yes, everybody in East Portable got connected. The project's not done. The tank is close to being finished. You have 2 wells that are still being, the council will remember, your agreement was the connections. We had 3 water wells and 3 new wells funded, as well as a reservoir. So the reservoir is close to being finalized. One of the so you had the Olive Street well, or Olive Avenue well, Olive Avenue well. The church well, as it's called, that's on the west side of the community is now being equipped, and the Aiken well, the infamous Aiken well, is the paperwork's getting processed. So it's amazing. You're serving a community. You brought on 800 plus customers with 1 well, really, and really that's a testament to your community who, through their water conservation efforts, that you haven't had a crisis. That doesn't mean that Mike Knight doesn't sweat it out a little bit. We will this summer. Because I don't want to use the D word, but they're starting to use the D word. So Eagle Mountain Casino relocation, lots of efforts and projects around that. I spoke about tertiary treatment, water retention basin, recharge basin, relocations, State Route 190 improvements, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Transit zero emission projects. Tule River Parkway Phase 3 will go to construction this year. That's a CMAQ funded, federally CMAQ funded project with a Measure R match to it. Butterfield Stage Corridor, not State Corridor, and trail amenities I spoke about, and water infrastructure, Sigma Prep. So a lot of major, I would say a lot of efforts being put in those major elements. So this is street projects. This is the slate of streets that we're working with right now. This doesn't include utility costs. This is just the cost of the asphalt and stuff. Is almost 32 million in estimated projects. Last year you introduced Morton as a priority, so design is the beginning of that, and that's between Westwood and Plano. Right now, just the street reconstruction costs itself, not counting utilities underneath. Again, that's another, and I have a slide that will kind of show you that. Is almost $11 million in the cost to reconstruct Morton Avenue. Villa is ready to go. It's almost $4 million in the cost, and one of those $1 million is the slough box culvert that would need to be implemented. Main between Olive and Morton, we'll be doing the. This becomes. COVID really interrupted, this is one good example, and I know Javier would speak to this, engaging with the Main Street folks to talk about this. I know Councilmember Peñalosa brought this up as well. I mean, this is going to be, there's a very defined window when this can happen, kind of that after Cinco de Mayo, before Veterans Day parade, right? So the work you got to do, you got to get it done and get out so that you don't have Main Street in disrepair for, and it would have been great if we could have done it during COVID, but it wasn't ready to go to, it's still under design. So, and this includes as well the development of a parking lot. We call it the Main Street parking lot at the JCPenney site, which we will try at the direction of council to get that caught up so that when we do the reconstruction of Main from Putnam, and you'll see this in here, Putnam to Olive, that we can also, once we're in, you know, if you're going to break eggs to make an omelet, let's not make the omelet twice if we can avoid it. Grand, Henry Hand to Leggett is a $3 million project. Newcomb, Olive de Morton, this one's ready to go. Actually, we're just kind of buttoning up this, ready to bid. Olive de Morton, it's almost $3 million project. Henderson, this will be ready to go as well, 2.9 million. Union, and I've got a schedule here for Union, Indiana to J at almost 2.5. Property acquisition is proving to be challenging there, so moving target. Montgomery, J to H is a smaller reconstruction project. Plano was trying to get in the Caltrans right away just to finish something, and yeah, I'll tell you, Caltrans folks are all still working from home, so trying to get things pushed through Caltrans right now is a little challenging. Henry Street, I spoke about earlier, in improvements there associated with Henry Street Park, and then Date. There's a small segment there after the bridge project we want to get. There's some, it's kind of a really narrow street there on Date at J&H. So this was the council authorized, previously authorized 31, almost 31 million. What do we anticipate for 21-22 is over 11 million in estimated costs. So as I mentioned, Villa, all up to Henderson, this does not include the bridge, the slough culvert. We have environmental issues we have to go through to address that. But we are looking at estimated $3 million. This will be ready to go to construction this next fiscal year. Newcomb, as I shared, Henderson, Westwood to Patsy. Grand, we're looking at breaking that into two. This would be the Henry Hand to Plano section. Montgomery, J to H, Plano, and Henry. And the hook, this is what we're ready and hoping, and you see programmed in the CIP. So this is what it looks like, as I shared, current year, next year, and then forward-looking 3 years more. And I'll provide this, council, I'll email this to you so you don't feel like you have to hurry and make notes. 22-23 right now, we're looking at Maine to Morton, Maine, Morton to Putnam. Right now, we have $1 million attached to that. That doesn't include the intersections because that comes at a later schedule. Villa, the slough crossing, now you're seeing us hopefully getting through the environmental process and approval and getting to constructing the concrete box culvert, about $1 million. And then Date, J to H, has actually go to construction if we can do the acquisition we need to do. 23-24, right now Morton, this is now you see the first, as under design, the first segment of Morton from Division to Plano going to construction, right now 1.75 million. And then the second phase of Main reconstruction, Putnam to Olive, which does not include the that doesn't include the JCPenney site or the Main Street parking lot. 24-25, you see a bump up back again. Here you see Union Avenue ready for construction at 1.7. Morton, and the next segment, Conley to Division at 1.6. Grand, another phase of that. Plano to Leggett at 1.5. And then the intersections, hoping that now that the Main Street, the two segments of Main Street have been done, now coming back and doing the intersections. And this is where we talk about doing decorative asphalt, colored asphalt with some type of artistic element for Main Street. So kind of breaking this down. So I talked about Villa being done. It's about a $4 million project. We're looking at environmental and right-of-way being completed this year and design. Utilities relocation and beginning of construction at almost 2.7 million. And again, next fiscal year, not the coming one, but the one following, 22-23, being the box culvert. Main Street reconstruction, as I spoke about, currently in design, continuing design this year. Storm drain improvements at $500,000 this coming fiscal year. And then 22-23, the first phase of Main Street reconstruction at $1 million. Putnam and Olive at $1 million. This JCPenney Main Street parking lot at $900,000, and then the intersections in the following 24-25. And then Union Avenue reconstruction, so working on environmental this next year, design this year, right away, hopefully achieve that. You see a number that we put in there for that. Utilities relocation, a needing there, and then a construction cost of 1.725. Here's Morton Avenue. This just gives you a magnitude. It's a $17 million project, what we estimate. So design currently underneath it will be this year and next year. Water, and that includes water and purple and blue pipe. So blue pipe, water goes in blue pipe, recycled water goes in purple pipe. Together, it's almost $4 million on that. Sewer, a little bit more than $2 million, and streets costs at over $10 million, as we spoke about. So, and actually, that's just the 23, 24 through 28, 29. Apologize on that. We have introduced a proposed project in here, which is Westwood, Henderson to Westfield. This is dealing with the slough. You know, we have development that's occurred, and we have proposed development, and then we've got this just back and forth kind of patchwork of alignments along Westwood between, and I want to be careful here. I may have a conflict of interest, so I want to be very careful here on this project. So I want to be, the city manager's not recommending this project. I just need to be clear. It's in the CIP, but he has nothing to do with this. Okay? So I'm just a presenter at this point. So, but I know why this is happening, because there's development interest here, and you've got back and forth right-of-ways here that are involved. So that's all I'll have to say on that. Again, on proposed projects, there's well over 12 million. Animal shelter facility, I put the big number in here. This includes all kinds. This includes dog park, frontage improvements, facility improvements, add alternates. It's kind of what, everything out the door kinds of things. Technology improvements, as I talked about, looking at how we can take advantage perhaps of some of the funds, improve some of the connectivity in the community. Tule River Parkway, I mentioned, it's about a $2 million construction project. Fire station improvements, we are looking at with the Station 1's repainting and fixing of its facades. It's recommended or suggested to continue with that into some of the, so we have what's called the block house that serves our IT function, which could stand some improvements, as well as what used to be the old Chamber of Commerce building, which we use as fire prevention office, that those would be painted and made nicer. And then at Station 2, that similarly, there'd be a repainting and a repairing of the stucco at Station 2 as well. So, and then at Station 1, we also need to, so we have dormitory quarters is what I'll call it, and really needs to be separate rest areas. That's what I'll call them. So I won't call them bedrooms. I'll call them rest areas. So instead of being in a large space with that each has their own rest space. So Chief Lapierre is looking at that as a project and looking to at the second story to create separate rest areas for personnel. City Hall ADA improvements. We have improvements to our counters and this bathroom here, which we would like to bring up to ADA. So it has some costs associated. So risk management, in large part, is the funding source for this. I spoke about the fire and police evidence storage and stout improvements previously as well. So that just kind of we also have some in the parks area looking to make arbor improvements at Murray Park. We have a couple arbors there that need some attention. And so I think there's 30,000 that we recommend to be expending in the CIP for that. Multimodal projects, there's over 50, what I talked about was over $15 million, greatly benefiting from $7 million in ATP grants. And that's why I said, this says $8 million. Ted would tell you, you give me the projects and let me work out the funding. So Butterfield Stage Quarter is $7.4 million. We have Tule River Bridge, as I remarked, we've got a number there that deals with design and with construction at $3.75 million. Rails to Trails lighting, as I spoke about, $1 million. Tule River Parkway lighting at $1.6 million, and Veterans Park Trail parking lot and restroom at $1.65 million. So those are that's kind of just recommended. And I would say this is a 5-year work program to begin working through those different improvements. State Route 190, proposed projects, well over $43 million. West Road Roundabout's going to be the first thing out of the gate that's under design. Will go to construction in 22. It's a little bit more than $5 million. This is an example, and I'll speak about the relationship with Caltrans, facilitated by TCAG. This is going to be a Welcome to Porterville roundabout. There's some renderings that we're working with right now, and having Porterville in the roundabout, some type of a artistic feature in the middle. One of the concepts right now is a kind of a mountainscape that would be done out of, like an alloy that would have like an orange tint to it, is what I would say. Everything's got to be breakable. So if somebody runs into the roundabout, it breaks away and it doesn't become a brick wall they run into. So in this design, they're talking about doing native plants, native planting. That's been important to the folks that have done the Tule River Parkway and the native planting stuff. So we're talking about native plants being used also to reduce water consumption. And then Porterville prominently in the two on the east and west portions of that roundabout, north as you go and leave, I guess I would say. Also having Mighty 190 prominently displayed, and we're working through how that will work as well. But this will be the first one, and I'll speak a little bit in a moment about Mighty 190 efforts. Newcomb Roundabout is also in this conversation and dealing with the Newcomb Tule River Bridge. We're looking at almost $13 million in the bridge, and then the roundabout is $7 million. And then you're also going to have the connecting street costs, which we're going to need to coordinate with Caltrans on as well. That's what's going to be tricky, because we're going to have to plan for a roundabout to be transitioned to an overpass, because that's so roundabouts are interim traffic controls to ultimate stuff. So roundabout at Westwood is actually supposed to be an interchange someday. So you have an interim improvement to a long-term project. So Westwood is a roundabout that needs to plan for an interchange. Newcomb is a roundabout that needs to plan for an overpass. So the bridge, so there's going to have to be some alignments between 190, if you can think about this, and the bridge. So this bridge is actually going to have to be built a little bit higher to account for 190, because you're going to have to come down and then come back up. So there's some stuff that we're going to have to work through with Caltrans on that. Plano Roundabout, $6.3 million, and it's actually, this is an $11 million, because the college roundabout and the Plano roundabout are going to go together. They work together as a system. And that's after Westwood, these will be the next ones. These are 5 years afterwards. And then Newcomb would be probably 5 years after that. State Route 65 northbound on-ramp off of 190. It's amazing. That's a $5 million project for just a little bit of shoulder work, but it is. And then Main Street improvements, there's some improvements on the on-ramp and off-ramp on Main Street at 190, which is, they're looking at roundabouts, I'll be candid, or some other traffic control measures at about 2.7 million. So that's all so when the council took an action to appropriate $50 million of Measure R money from the 65 widening that wasn't going anywhere, this is in large part where a lot of those funds are going to. And we are going to do our best not to use Measure R money and to use federal CMAQ money, which is 89, under the current rules, you use 89% of the funds and then you have the matches. So this is, again, have them use federal grants to pay for the improvement. So this 40 million, we can stretch out to 100 million That's really what we're trying, the strategies that we try to employ here, which is, yeah, Westwood Roundabout, well, let's get it in the CMAQ program. CMAQ, and remember, we get about 5 million a year. So this is all this whole sequencing that we do in our county and how quickly we can have project-ready, shovel-ready projects. And this also doesn't account for any state funds that may come in, which is also there too. So this is a matter, I hope it's not inappropriate. I call it the hokey pokey, right? We all remember you put your left foot in, put your left foot out. So we put the money in, you bring the project in, and then, oh, great, now you got federal money, you got state money, and now I can take out the Measure R money because you now got a fully funded project and I only need my 10% match. So you changed a $5 million expenditure into a $500,000 expenditure, and now you got $4.5 million to go program into another project. And so, so when you see $43 million here, we hope that it represents $120 million. And then on the Money 190, I'll call it with Caltrans proposed roundabout themes. So we're working on creating a common theme for the Mighty 190, mile markers. And they may not be every mile, but they may be some number of, and again, they're kind of working with this mountainscape and I wish I had something of good quality I could show you. Right now, it's just kind of being shared screen stuff from the designers at Caltrans that are working on it. We're looking on corridor screening. We have a number of areas, both on 65 and 190, that, and this is efforts that are going on by TCAG, which Vice Mayor is representative to that, which is identifying areas where there's water that can be connected to the city or trucked in. They can do trucked water on some of the plants that only require watering, say, once a month or something less. So again, trying to emphasize native plants. And then corridor cleanup, and this is one that is most recently, which I wanted to propose to you. This is going to go to TCAG. What month are we in? This isn't on Monday. I don't think it's on, so I think it's the following. So, but I did want to bring this up. So corridor cleanup. This has been through the sustainable, what's called Sustainable Corridors Committee, which has been screening. How do we beautify our corridors, 65 and 190. Caltrans spends, according to their budget, $50,000 a year in highway cleanup in Porterville city limits. That's what they say they spend. TCAG has said, okay, what if we developed a program where, let's say that's cleaned up once a month. I don't even think it's that, but let's say we want to have it happen twice a month, and there's about 15 miles of corridor, which is actually, if you think of both sides, 30 miles. So it's a pretty significant cleanup effort, and if that were to happen a couple of times a month, so what we're looking at is taking that $50,000 number and trying to triple it. So at worst, now this is a worst case scenario presented here, Caltrans would keep their 50 grand in, TCAG would put in 100,000 of Measure R money, and then the city would be asked to put in 50,000. What we're hoping is that actually the city won't have to, and that Caltrans will put up the matching money to TCAG, and the city won't need to put in anything. So again, this is an example of the hokey pokey. So Caltrans has 50,000. Ted's like, okay, if the city will put in 50 grand, and TCAG puts in 100 grand, now we have ourselves a $200,000 program. Now, Caltrans, why don't you increase your 50,000 to 100,000, and then the city can back out. And now you have a matched program. So we're working through this right now. There's going to be, this is going to be presented to the TCAG board. This has been a work product. I wanted to present it to you just to make, it's not your budget, but if you don't like this idea, but this is an example of what this idea looks like, which is, all right, for $50,000, it's not a good product right now. So how do we improve that? Well, we need $200,000, okay? So how do we get there? Well, what if the city puts in 50 and TK puts in 100, now what do we get? Well, that's a great program, okay. So why don't you go back to Caltrans and go back to headquarters and ask to double your money because, hey, you've got money, you've got agencies putting in money in. So right now, this conversation's happening in Visalia and Porterville about doing beautification within the corridors of the city limits of Visalia and Porterville. this is one I do want to get kind of as a thumbs up, thumbs down, and my sense is you know, given the comments of the council and dealing with community cleanliness and those that you'd like to see the corridors, and how this might also extend beyond, you know, this, Caltrans would tell you the on-ramps, and this is, you get this frequently about where the highway and the city comes together. This would be how this stuff would be kept in better condition.
I think it's great to look at that. I mean, we obviously put in a lot of effort into the Mighty 190. I know that there's efforts to create investment in opportunity zones and different things like that. So just however we can support the cleanliness and the aesthetics of it, we're good. I know you said you were looking for some kind of feedback. I think that it's worthy. Especially if we're showing interest by saying we'll put up the money. A lot of times, kind of like you're indicating, that shows that we're serious about it, so they should be more serious about it.
Yeah, and I think it's better than a 50-50 chance that you're not going to need to. But it's a matter of demonstrating that you're serious about it, that this is so important to Tulare County and the city of Porterville and the city of Visalia that they're willing to put up some of their own funds to incentivize for Caltrans to increase. And then in the end, what Ted hopes is that the city doesn't have to put in its funds, that Caltrans meets them at the $100,000 and we get a $200,000 program, which Measure R is paying for part of that and Caltrans is paying part of it. And with that, I kind of wanted to say it wasn't that great.
No, I think it was great. It was good. It had some color. It was good. Okay, council. So now that you've heard the presentation, I know we had some questions, and if you have any further questions or comments about what you've just heard, now's the time. I'll start with Councilmember Peñalosa. I'll give Councilmember Carrillo a couple minutes to digest.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I don't think I have any immediate questions. There's a significant amount of projects. I was hoping that we could get Union faster, but you know, it's just looking at the timeline. I guess we're gonna go into 2024. For some reason, I just anticipated it earlier. I don't know why, but I know roads tend to take a good amount of time, especially in terms of the planning and getting the engineers to work on all that and getting it ready. There's a lot of good projects, I would say, and just again, thank city manager and the rest of the staff working to get the ball rolling. I know that John, you mentioned the fact that when it comes to CMAQ funds, you know, having those projects in line and prepared, I think it has given us an opportunity to really put us as a priority for a lot of the funding. So I appreciate that due diligence in getting those projects going, even if we don't have the funding available. But I think it demonstrates the importance of getting those projects, you know, planned. And so when the funding is available, it can become a reality. So I really do look forward to many of these projects as for some of the ones that are going to be completed for the next fiscal year. And yeah, but no immediate questions. I think you did a great job in providing an overview of the projects. Lots of money, a lot of money, but yeah, finding ways that we can make sure that we can utilize the fundings that are coming in, grants, or any other areas that we can match to make sure that we can produce as many projects as we can in the coming years. But that's all, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, I was glad you mentioned Union, but I did note that it was some of the acquisition that sounded like it was taken in. The number was about 1 3/4 homes worth of acquisition as far as the amount goes. So I can see that That's why it's taking so long. But kudos to sticking to the project, because that has been a long time in the works. So, Councilmember Carrillo, did you have any comments or questions?
I don't right now. Just going to listen to the conversation.
Okay. And Vice Mayor, anything further?
You can't see me smiling under the mask, but I have to tell you that on the Union project, I have always been out in the conversation because of conflict. But it just pleased me to see what was on here and not knowing with all the discussions and where it was and where it was going. I will say that as I heard Mr. Lawless in his conversation with regard to the fundings, I hear the same conversation at TCAG. And I've learned a lot to embrace the collaboration, because a lot of the projects that we are moving forward that are on the list are projects that began back when I first got onto council on TCAG. So I am very grateful not only to our city manager, but to Mr. Smalley, who has a bigger picture to help us through. I'm very excited with the beautification projects as we embrace tourism and people coming to Porterville. And as far as the cleanliness and the corridor cleanup, that project is almost without a doubt a given, which, as I think of the process, as I said, all the projects that are listed and have been submitted are very significant, and I would not even think of, adding more to what you've presented, but I just have a question, and it's pretty much cosmetics. I know that at the airport, at the cafe, that the ADA restroom was completed, and I just want to bring to the table an effort, perhaps in the future, as you're aligning with airport and the project of the casino, as you're aligning with that on the cafe, there are 2 restrooms that probably should be looked into, only because I don't know, they're very small, and maybe a remodel in place or a future. That's something that I would like to see come to the table, but it's again in alignment with cosmetics and beautification.
If I may,
Sure.
just so in the draft CIP, so airport plays a pivotal role, I think. And so we have, my eyesight's quickly going. We've put in out of airport improvement funds, 70,000 for restroom update and painting of interior and exterior. For the restroom hazardous material abatement and renovation, because we're going to have, you've got old stuff, so you're going to have to mitigate abatement. You're going to have to abate what you got.
Oh, okay, and so,
Because you're going to have lead-based paint and you're going to have asbestos, promise you. And so you're going to have to abate, or tiles and stuff like that. And then, I think it's 50 grand, sorry. I need readers. 50 grand in parking lot. So.
well, I was just bringing it to the table that
we
in
are
the planning process, in
our discussions, we did identify, and we have in here actually that.
and I did see it, but I thank you for the clarification, because it was something that, to bring out to the table. And I know that there are a lot of sewer drainage and road maintenance projects in the foresight of the future as I was looking to the list. And I know that a lot of the annexations have some stress. They have stress with, it's because some of the constituents have a lot of road stress with the potholes. However, some of the annexation areas are not all connected to sewer and water, and that is a foresight for the future, and maybe for some not too soon. And I'm not the person to say, well, go fix a road and then tear it up. That's not the way it's to be done. let's do the other, but there are some huge potholes in some of those areas where the street is condensely, and I was talking about annexation 479. I drove by it and I looked at it. And in the business aspect, and this would be cosmetics, and it would be something for the future, it's not something for now, but it would be something to work with maybe the businesses, and it's maybe this is not the place for the conversation. It could probably be a project alongside for cosmetics and deemed for a later discussion. But what some people have brought forth sidewalks in the business developed area of the community. And I don't know if there was ever a discussion to that or if there would ever be any type of a funding for that. But I'm just bringing it to the table for a future discussion.
Can I ask for clarification on that?
As an example, I would give you the street location. It would be for business. What constitutes downtown Porterville was the question, and for business development, a sidewalk where there isn't one, out there on Vine and Hockett, and perhaps behind, and perhaps that area where Bartlett School is, the whole back area does not have any sidewalk, but how do you delineate what would be deemed appropriate? Private property, business, and all of that. And again, that's just a conversation. If this is not the place for it, it's just something that I wanted to put out
It's a
there.
philosophical conversation. So you know, when you talk about Bartlett School, the school, you know, this is kind of the school can do the sidewalk if it like, but it won't because it doesn't want to spend the money for that. So then it asks you. So we have a $400,000 project right now to do curb gutter sidewalk street lights serving West Putnam School right now, which is as we're doing the Newcomb reconstruction, it's facilitating the pedestrian movements, curb gutter sidewalks in that former unincorporated area. On both Putnam and I can't remember the other street, but both streets are getting curb gutter sidewalk and street lights, which you're funding out of Measure I.
Okay.
Because, and this is the Safe Routes to Schools program was collapsed. So it's now the ATP. So there used to be Safe Routes to Schools. We'd apply. It was very competitive funding, very oversubscribed. And in the end, there was lots of curb gutter and sidewalks, curb gutter and street walk projects for schools that weren't because of inadequate funding or weren't done right. That's also happened. So you have 400,000 of Measure I that's programmed right now in that. We have in the budget here 400,000 of Measure I for the Burton Safe Routes to Schools. We call it Safe Routes to Schools project. So we have an ATP application we submitted. So we submitted 2 ATP applications to the state because the rules of TCAG are you have to apply to the state to be eligible. Let me back up for a second. I'm sorry, there's a lot of unpack here. So when it comes to sidewalks, so especially schools. So we don't, if someone tells you about Safe Routes to Schools, it doesn't exist. It's the ATP now. So TCAG has a rule. So the state has its funds and then it allocates to the counties a lesser amount. So I think Tulare County's appropriation of ATP is $3 million. And remember, there's a huge, $3 million. The city's grant just for the Butterfield Stage Corridor is $7 million, which obviously Tulare County couldn't support the city's application, even if it was the best application, didn't have enough money. So everybody has to compete at the state, and then that's the first round is you got to apply to the state, and then if you're funded by the state, that's great. If not, then you can be considered for local funding. So I think we have we call it the Burton Safe Routes to Schools project, for lack of a better word, which is to improve Putnam and then improve Elderwood, I believe it is, which is the westerly street of that annexed area. And so we have programmed in there, and they have a very odd right-of-way situation there. So there is, I saw Javier light up, so he will understand. I understand it. I don't know how this happens. So there's a number of properties on Elderwood that dedicated right-of-way that allowed the road to come into their property. But if the road's improved, you have to give the property back. Is that a fair summary, Javier?
Yes, that's correct. It's a very odd scenario. Even our surveying consultant that we have on contract that's got lots of years of experience is like, wow, this is a new one for me. It's just highly unusual.
So we have right-of-way that we would like to put curb gutter and sidewalk and streetlights in as part of an ATP project, which Javier, what's your budget estimate for that project? Putnam and Elderwood.
That's 600,000.
Okay. So for the whole project?
Correct.
Okay. So is it likely we could get that funded through TCAG? Yes, I do. There's $3 million that's going to be available for TCAG, which we're going to compete for. I think this is a good project. Now, if it's not funded, you've got this council's made decisions that out of your Measure I, you would do $400,000 to do curb gutter and sidewalk streetlight projects in unincorporated areas. So again, this is a leveraging of funds. We have a project, a $600,000 project, which you could appropriate if you'd like. We've submitted it for a grant. Hopefully we'll get $600,000 out of TCAG to do the project. And then you can find another project to work with $400,000. But again, that's the council. I'm glad you brought this up, but this is what I said. You have right now we have it kind of tethered to the Burton thing because I don't know if we're going to get that or not.
May I comment? And I really appreciate the information because I was driving around in areas only because the one in the business developed area was brought to my attention, which is Vine and Hockett. And so as I drove around to get visual, I saw the one as such where the school.
Well,
So
no,
I was trying to be.
The schools mentioned it to us before. That'd be great if the city put in the
Oh,
sidewalk.
no, well,
No, they have.
It wasn't brought to me, the other one was,
Which-
so
which what
I wanted to know what and where and how.
Yeah, so I would say as a strategy, the sidewalk area that isn't improved at Bartlett, when we do the Morton reconstruction, just as we're doing with Newcomb, that would be a great Measure I funded project to do a safe routes to schools, is what I would call it, improvement, curb gutter. And what I would suggest is that there be a conversation with the school district, because that's kind of a pinched road. Javier, is that a fair estimation that we'd like that to be a little bit wider road there?
What location again was that?
Kessing on the west side of Bartlett Middle School. I just remember getting complaints from some of the neighbors back in the day about people parking because they were using the fields. And so you would have people parking on both sides of the road and then the two-way, and they felt it was too narrow. So I don't know if it is or not. Here's the thing. So right now you have dirt. Once you put curb gutter and sidewalk, you don't have people parking on the dirt anymore. So that's why if you put in curb gutter and sidewalk and streetlights, you're now going to further pinch that road because people are parking in the dirt. They're not going to park on the sidewalk.
And we have planned development coming to that corner, which did request some street parking, I believe,
Right.
is there.
Right, this is what I'm saying. So we may need to have a conversation about, it's not simply putting in curb gutter, sidewalk, and streetlights. It's going to be looking at, is there, in consideration of that, perhaps a partnership of dedication of property so that those improvements can be there to meet the circulation.
Thank you. I learned something right now in
Well,
this discussion.
So going back to so we have a unique situation. They've never seen a right-of-way. So right-of-way that was, and this is on Elderwood. So there, what do you have, 12 homes, Javier?
Right.
About 12 homes that have a reversion that here we provide the right-of-way for you to put the road in, but if you improve the road, then you lose the right-of-way.
Okay.
So there's no motivation to improve the road. Yet, I think they're asking for curb gutter and sidewalk and streetlights in that area. So it's a very interesting, so this is obviously something we're going to need to talk about as part of right-of-way acquisition things. But we are, in here is a 600,000, and what I would say, it's a great question because it gets to strategy, which is the council has developed as part of its Measure I program, of that $3 million that have been set aside for roads, $2 million for the reconstruction. That's how we're getting to $11 million. We've accumulated some Measure I to do Henderson Avenue as an example. You've got a project, is it Vandalia or Newcomb that has Measure I programmed into it, Javier? It's one of them.
Currently, it'd be Newcomb.
Newcomb. So as an example, so you have 2 million that's dedicated to major street projects, and then of that million, you have 400,000 that was set aside for this curb gutter and street street lights, and then 400,000, or actually the remainder was set aside for the the 600,000, which were now, you saw those improvements on Porter Road, and actually turning out very well in city self-performed overlay projects. So we're doing both cold mix and hot mix overlays. So, and it's been through the, I would say, the vision of the council to use these funds and a significant part of that to do road improvements, essentially with general fund dollars.
We got a lot of information here. It's probably a discussion we should continue on with this.
There's a lot there.
Yeah, that's something to process.
What we would how to handle that. So I think there's we're going to get money from TK. I don't know if we're going to get fully funded. So if we let's say we get, it's a let's say we get $300,000. We'd be coming to you to say, we got a $300,000 grant for a $600,000 project. We'd like to match the grant with Measure I funds, which you have programmed. So, but I don't know what that is. There's not enough Measure I, well, there is, but in the way the program's been developed with council direction of that $400,000 a year, which like I said, right now is in the Newcomb project. So with the next reload of that 400,000, all right, so it's not enough to do the project without the grant, which you could do 600,000 if you wanted to, but let's see what the grant is, because if we get 300,000, then it's 300,000, and then if you got 100,000, what project are you looking at to do curb gutter sidewalk street? Another conversation is you have the headquarters, new Forest Service headquarters being constructed right now at 4th and Morton, and we have rails to trails. So one of the projects that we're looking at as we're doing Grand is to do the corridor on Henrahan where the rails to trails is, and to do that as curb gutter sidewalk. Not necessarily street lights, because we're already proposing to light the parkway with solar lighting. But at least to do the curb gutter sidewalk, so you have the delineation on Henrahan of where, where's the trail and where's the street. Because right now, there's just dirt. the trail comes up to the pavement.
Okay.
You have options. So the good news is you have options, and so there, but there may be other, this is the reason for tonight. What areas do you want to focus
I like that there would be
on?
options.
Yeah.
I like that there would be options for curb gutter sidewalks, and thinking about the city of Porterville as we progress with beautification projects. And as businesses come in.
Yeah, I think it's, well, as we already mentioned, just trying to be flexible with some of the other funding that's coming, but along with being flexible, some of the projects, Vice Mayor, that you mentioned, or some of the situations you mentioned, just trying to tidy up some of those random occurrences that just, for whatever reason, through time, haven't been developed the same. Especially if we're going to be looking at Main Street and the surrounding areas, and if there's any of those isolated situations that we can just kind of address those while being flexible, knowing that we're going to be focused on the list of the priorities which we've seen, which are a tremendous amount of projects, tremendous amount of planning. I mean, all of those street projects are so needed, but glad to know that we can still have some flexibility as situations arise, or as we identify other projects that come up. I did just want to mention too that the City Hall restroom, which I identify as one of the examples of a classic restroom, all the way down to the latches on the stalls, but everything has to change at some point. So hopefully they'll be able to give some reminiscence of the past while updating for the future.
We had this conversation about Jason will have, Jenny and I had this, so this, when Jenny was here, we were having this conversation. We will strive to maintain the Art Deco. A good example of this, what we shouldn't have done, it was more utility than it was, for example, the laminate that was put, when we recarpeted City Hall back in mid-2000s. We put laminate down because the carpet had worn out, which was good from a high traffic, but it's not consistent with Art Deco. So that's a good example of thinking a little bit before you do it. If we were doing that again now, and it's not suggested here, we are looking at that, but we wouldn't put laminate down. We would put something that would be consistent with architectural design of Art Deco, I guess that's what because wood laminate's not that, even though there's lots of wood in this facility, which was the thought process at the time. So that being said, it is one that we are considering, even with the counter remodel projects, that how can we maintain that architectural, and believe, I don't choose the color, I don't choose the curtains in my house, so I'm the last person that can tell you what that is, but there are people that in the designing world will make recommendations on that. Is that fair, Javier?
Right. Yeah, we have 30% plans that we're gonna be reviewing for colors and finishes and the like.
So, yes. We would do it differently than we did laminate before, as an example.
Well, okay, that's quite a lot of information. I know, was there any other comments, Councilmember Carrillo?
Yeah, I'll make a few comments. So it was a great presentation for myself because it's all new. So I want to thank you for that. I mean, I could really tell how much work and planning has gone into this, these projects and ideas prior to even today, to see where some of these are in progress how funding has been obtained. And I guess one of the interesting things for me too is just seeing how cohesive some of these projects are with each other, how they fit together and kind of make an overall plan. So that's really hopeful, especially at this time, I feel like. And not just returning from COVID, but also the relocation of the casino, because I think it's going to bring a whole new population and entertainment and a place for us, even in the city, just the community to be. So I think these projects are great. I mean, I was trying to highlight some of the ones that I thought are the most interesting to me or that I would like to learn more about because I know least about that. And I mean, they just, I can't even select. There's so many great ones. You know, I do feel like the I always pronounce this wrong, tertiary treatment and the electrification. Learning more about those because I think that our city stands out because of those types of projects. I think you mentioned about we didn't get to have a ribbon cutting for the transit, and that presentation was unbelievable to me. I mean, I couldn't even express that when I was trying to explain it to other people later. And I wish I would have said more to Mr. Tree that evening about that presentation, but it was really overwhelming, I think. And I would love our community to see more of that kind of thing. And I think it would be good to still have a ribbon cutting at some point for that. Let's see, what else did I put in notes about? I think it's really impressive, the funding and the way that it's utilized and obtained, whether it be through grants and, you know, your hokey pokey.
Can I mention another I mentioned this at the last council meeting. I hope I did. We received another grant for it was called HISSIP, Highway Safety Improvement Program. So we have a project in here. I didn't even mention it. So on Newcomb, we're redoing the intersection at Newcomb and Olive, which has no ADA. The signalization's all being improved. Dedicated left turns. That's and this was based on you have to provide accident data and that sort of thing to prove that you need the funding. So that's a grant. Well, we were successful in this last application for $1 million something, isn't it, Javier? Or no, that's seven something.
660.
Yeah, 700. So or 660. So. But another example where you have an improvement that's done, which is only half the project because Caltrans applied for the same funding source. First of all, I don't think that's fair that you have to compete against the state, for state funding. But anyway, they got funded the west side, and so hopefully we'll catch up. And so in the end, that whole intersection, the synchronization and the signalization will all be cleaned up at 65 Olive and Porter. And as another example of just another grant that, and I think I said this, they're not sexy. I mean, I would, I don't know, maybe streetlights are sexy, but but it's, I think real credit to Javier and his staff that are really put the pedal to the metal on some of these grant funds. I apologize, council member, but that just reminded me of another grant that just constantly trying to find the grants so that you can get the money to last longer and to give you more projects to do.
Right, but even, you know, when you discussed adding in the lighting to improve the paths and have those lights there, I mean, that is, I think the mayor mentioned it earlier, that is where the people are going to want to go right away. We're going to want to be out on those trails and things that are in place for the community. So I really appreciate that the staff is thinking ahead to get those improvements put in. I think even with the library project, that's going to be a huge one. And one of the things Mr. Moore and I talked about was incorporating into our agenda to get updates on what's going on that month with the library, whether it be the mobile or the temporary library, any little things that are going on, so that way when I come back and report, each month, then we'll have some more information, at least little things to give out to the community to share back, so that's another thing. Yeah, just with that, I'm, really looking forward to this, looking forward to working with the council and the city manager and the staff and hearing the updates on these, and want to support however I can.
And as a follow-up to that, Javier and I were texting, I didn't want to misspeak. So the architect that we have working on the interim should have plans ready to go to bid by the 1st of May. So I think we awarded this in February. We're really, to turn plans around in 2 months is pretty, so we're looking at having those 1st of May, coming to council with authorization to advertise for bid to do those improvements, based upon if you're satisfied with the design that's worked with.
Mayor, I have one more thing.
Sure.
So one of the huge things that I see this all coming together too is a lot of the tourism pieces. And just in case there's like another idea, and it could tie in with one of the projects already going, how much time do we have to think about that or discuss it? Or, I might have an idea or some ideas, I don't know, but might not right this minute.
Well,
How does that work?
So tonight is direction, right? So we have our CIP. Have we captured all of the priorities, goals, and objectives of the council? It's a great question. What's the process? Tell me the process. So process is, here tonight is, we have a draft. Do we need to move things forward, backwards? Have we not, what's not on here that needs to be on here? And then we go back to work, and we present this to you 1st of June as a draft budget, which we have, that's another opportunity, which any Tuesday, you can certainly bring an idea. But at the first meeting of June, we'll present a draft budget based on this, on the direction given this evening. And hopefully we do it right. We'll talk specifically about the council's priorities as you've defined them this evening, and highlight those, and then say, and here's the other. I think this is going to be a $200 million budget. I think we did 130 or whatever it was last year. I think we're going to push 200 this year. We'll see. So at that point is another, we present the draft budget for feedback. What do we need to do? Because the second meeting of June is when we do a public hearing and there's consideration of ratification. So you see you don't even have the draft here. You have, okay, here's the CIP. These are the big dollars. There are elements in the budget that we are working on. As an example, fire personnel. So we've applied for a SAFER grant for additional fire personnel, 6 personnel, plus based on the recommendations from the SART of also creating a deputy chief position. So we're working through that budgetarily right now for presentation to you the 1st of June. We are looking at, there's some other elements we're still trying to, how do I say it? What else is out there that as we're building the budget together? So you'll see a lot of these kind of just referenced in the CIP, but are they, can we fund it with the departmental budgets? Do we require an additional appropriation of reserve funds? Those sorts of things. Then knowing that there's other funds that are coming, you could have reimbursement of costs. Those are all just, so there's ongoing internal conversations on a number of different items that still would be potentially presented come 1st of June. So I would say, I guess,
Well, I'd say that if you have something that you want to just bring to the conversation now while the clay is being molded. They could people could have that in their mind, and wouldn't necessarily have to be fully developed. But I think first time I spoke up, I talked about what I was in favor of, and I saw notes being written because of that. So if you wanted to take a minute and say something now, you could, but you'll have other opportunities, but maybe not so early on in the process as now. So if you wanted to take a moment, you could.
Well, I just didn't want to overstep anything, but I know that one of the things, whether it be with the, I think I'll just wait and hold off.
Sure, and if it has anything to do with tourism specifically, if you wanted to talk about what the Mighty 190 is doing or something
Right.
like that, and see if there's already things happening, or if
Yes,
it's a conversation that generates from there, I'd be happy to
Yeah,
talk, or I know John's involved, and as well as Jason, so,
yeah.
you
I
know,
think I'll hold off for
Okay.
that, just so that I could hear already what's in progress. I don't want to say something way out in left field, and it could be, good things are already rolling like that.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of synergy that's building there. When you get Caltrans to embrace your idea in designing things for you, and I have to give credit to Ted Smalley, because it's all relationship based. He's created the environment for allowing them to not just do, as kind of the mayor was referencing, laminate on the utility, to actually how do we use a streetscape to promote something and then make it. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to be paying the difference, because there will be a bill in the Westwood Roundabout as an example. So they have which Measure R is going to be paying the difference in this, but the federal grant, there's certain things that it will only pay for, and then if you're asking for, a special shade of color, you get to pay for the shade of color. So there will be additional costs, but the good news is you have Measure R to help offset those costs, and those don't come from city dollars. Those come from the regional Measure R dollars that are there. So, I mean, that I think demonstrates the power of the Mighty 190, in that you have the state of California that's embraced it. And doing something that it really hasn't done anywhere else on the 190 corridor right now. So know that's a pretty, if it deals with tourism and the 190 and those, it's an incubator type thing. They really subscribe to that, and seeing how they can promote southeastern Tulare County, beginning in Porterville and ending at the Trail of 100 Giants, essentially, and everything in between.
I guess the last thing that I just thought of right now was, I mentioned it at our meeting today, was the ball field that was brought up by Councilmember Stowe. I just would like to make sure that we include to look at a space for that, because I agree with that. A baseball field to replace the one that isn't here anymore. That's something that I think is important, and I've heard that a lot in the community, especially from some of the older generation, that they thought we were going to replace that. I would just like to look into that. I don't know where exactly or how, but I just think that should be a conversation that we keep out there.
We are evaluating that as part of the Heritage Center, given that conversation, the direction that was given about, development of the mini pitches and those sorts of things. Can we do something there at that site as well? So,
Okay, thank you.
So we're evaluating it.
I thought I remembered that conversation,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to make sure I threw that out there.
Okay, and so I know, we've had an opportunity to comment. Councilmember Peñalosa, did you have anything extra or additional?
Yeah, I did, Mayor. Just one last thing I would like to say, and it's just, I forgot to mention it, was I really do appreciate the Henderson Avenue medium drought landscaping that's been happening, and that's happened in the last year and a half, and the continuation of it. And so it's just been a huge improvement to just the streets. And I know that I had mentioned it a couple of times. I mentioned the last time that we last year, or I think it was the year before. Sorry, I'm like, are we? Yeah, my third year, but. But yeah, that's really that I think that's so cool. I love the fact that we're putting in drought tolerant landscaping into our major streets, and I know I've heard some positive feedback around those as well. So just wanted to say thank you to the staff and for those that are making that happen. That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for mentioning that, because I was with my wife and we were driving and she hit my shoulder and she said, "Now that looks good." So I think we're on the right track with that. So I know we've given some feedback, quite a few projects, and none of them I would trade for really anything. I just have to ask the city manager if he's looking for us to move anything to the back of the pack, or for any specific guidance, or just our.
Yeah, what's been presented tonight. This is the work product. So is there anything that we've missed? Not focused on. I know that it's there's lots of, I like I said, like on the American Rescue Plan, I wish I could give you something more substantive. I just think anybody that says that they do, they don't. Until that comes out, but that goes to your question, just being, that will play a critical role in this process, I believe, because if the strategy is to spend funds to help benefit the community in a number of different ways, one of those can be in infrastructure, and it's limited, and then you've got, so you're just, and in the way that they've structured it, it's one of those things, you need to spend money quickly to then get the other. It's just, you can already see it's not really built to spend all the funds. So it's kind of in the strategy of trying to figure out how to spend how to take advantage of it. That's how I want to be careful how I frame that. But just you can just see the way it's structured, that it's you're going to have to be quick and ready to go. Shovel ready is the word we always say. And what are you aware of all the requirements when you're doing it? Because they keep saying this as well. This is all going to be subject to federal audit, which Jason can tell you how great that is to go through a HUD audit. And this would be Treasury. So it's going to have to be very quick, and it's going to have to be very precise.
Okay. Well, I think, I feel good about seeing what the projects are. If there's any uncertainty, and that uncertainty is only in being flexible with the ability to spend money on certain things from guidelines, I'm comfortable with that, knowing that the flexibility will be getting more than what we had anticipated from the planned projects. So, do we require an action on this, or this is just?
This is really just direction. This is, like I said, kind of an organic conversation. Have we, and now the process is we go back, we refine this plan, kind of really lock in the numbers, and we'll plan for a presentation as the draft budget, which this is the biggest portion of it. I mean, this is the core of your budget, non-personnel related. And so we'll now refine that. I express my appreciation to all the directors, Julie Phillips and her assistance in preparing this document, Maria, who spends countless hours, checking numbers, looking as things may change. So thank all of them for their efforts in putting this document together.
Great, thank you. Council, anything further?
Nope.
Okay, yes, and indeed, thank you to staff and city manager for putting this information together for us, and look forward to this next year and seeing some of these projects continue. So with that, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.